meeting to order and ask Nicole to take roll call, please.
Blake?
Here.
Carberry Montgomery?
Here.
McBurney?
Here.
Obrecht?
Here.
And Kroll is absent.
Okay, thank you. Please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Urbandale is a national leader in character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. In conducting tonight's meeting, we expect that all participants will act in a respectful manner consistent with these principles. Item 2 is to approve the agenda. I'll ask for a motion in a second.
So moved.
Motion by Blake, second by McBurney. Discussion, please vote. That passes. All right, we have one presentation tonight, and that is a proclamation for the library card sign-up month. I'm going to read this. And then we have a majority of our library board here tonight, so we're going to present this officially to the board and to Nicholas, our library director. Whereas Library Card Sign-Up Month is a national campaign started in 1987 to emphasize the importance of a child's education and to combat illiteracy and is celebrated by thousands of public libraries and schools each September. And whereas the Urbandale Public Library is a vital community asset that forges lifelong connections with the community, and a key to everyone's success is a library card. And that card empowers everyone to pursue their dreams, explore new passions, and find their voice. So now therefore I, Robert Andewig, Mayor of the City of Urbandale, on behalf of the Urbandale Public Library and the City Council, do hereby designate September as National Library Card Sign-Up Month. And I'm going to present this officially to Nicholas Janning, our library director, and also members of the library board that are with us. Praises to you coming up. Oops. Anything you want to say on behalf of the library?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Thank you for having us here tonight. We've been taking the opportunity of National Library Card Sign-Up Month to just encourage everyone here in Urbandale to sign up for a library card. Just a reminder, library cards are free, and all you need to have is a photo ID and a proof of current address to get a library card. So we think that unlocks a whole lot of things that we have. We've got lots of resources, study rooms, meeting rooms, events, so a lot of great things at the library. We've been trying to come up with some fun, unique things this month for National Library Card Sign-Up Month. We have done our collaboration with DART, where people are able to ride the library, the bus for free if they show their library card. We've also been working with the Public Art Committee. We did a nice concert out in front of the library on our patio. We're hoping to do another one of those concerts in October. And we're also doing a nice event over at the Senior Center, talking a little bit about the history of banned books, and that's going to be on Thursday. And Leslie, the assistant director, passed out some stickers of our new logos, so very excited to release that. We think that it's fun, vibrant, lots of colors. And if you want a sticker, all of the members of council are welcome to that. And then we're also going to be leaving some extra ones there on the front chair if anyone would like those. So thank you very much for having us here. I really appreciate it.
Yep, thank you, Nicholas. Thank you to the board again for everything you've done. Thank you for doing everything.
I'd like to give a comment. I am from Clive. I compared your library with ours. Is extremely big and well organized. I was impressed with the lady who helped me last night. They deserve a compliment. When you walk in a library, the books are smiling at you. It's very impressive. Oh, really? When creditors do, you have to express yourself. Clive Library is 1/8 of here. And there are, unfortunately, you go to a library, nobody reads a book. The further east you go, it gets worse. The further west you go, because the level of education is better. I want to congratulate you for having a nice library. It's very impressive. for someone who looks at it from outside.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, very good.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. All right, we'll move in Citizens Forum. I think, sir, I think you wanted to speak on Citizens Forum. I'll let you finish your comments. Yeah, I'll recognize you first if you want to come up, and please give your name and address for the podium. And
My name is Mohammed Kalantari. I live in 25 years. I live in Urbandale, 17 years in Clive. First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor and all the member of committee here. Thank you, every one of you have an interest to listen to people. My wife passed away 2 weeks ago. Is buried in McDevitt Cemetery. I see a lot of dogs came when the owner, they urinate on the graves. Is a very bad connotation. How would you feel if it was your grandfather, your grandmother, your sister, or your brother? I asked the mayor and the member of the council, you have to put a stop to that. This is not right. Our loved one is buried in the cemetery. I got tears in my eyes when I saw that. I personally request, if it's possible, I don't know, either it's your hand or McDevitt Cemetery, put a sign on the door, forbid the dog owner bring the dog to urinate on the graves. Is very disrespectful. There are certain things is not against the law, but against the moral value. I see a woman with bikini and pants, you come to the Walmart, you can't say anything because I have seen it, it has happened. It's against the moral value. Certain things is not against the law. For that reason, I request the council, if it's possible, put a stop to that, provide a sign. The dog owner, I have a German Shepherd. I love him to death. That was the last request of my wife. I spent $3,000. I bought that dog. I never take that dog to my wife's, which would be love to see my dog. But I guess it has a bad connotation for dogs enter the cemetery and urinate in the grave of your loved one. I hope I have a point. I think that every one of you are sitting here don't like that happen to you. It's very sad. Thank you very much for listening to my story. It was August 19, my wife passed away, and 23rd, we bury her. We are waiting for a stone. My life is shattered because I lost a loved one in my family. The sun went down forever, would never come back. I ask you to listen to my story. Please, please put a sign on it. They do not allow the dog come over and urinate on your grave of a loved one. All I can show you, some love and tears. I finished my story. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies, and the mayor especially.
thank you. As we spoke before, certainly we are going to like that. That is, first of all, my sympathies for you for the loss of your wife.
I appreciate for you.
First and foremost on that.
Humanity.
I'm sorry for the loss of your wife, but we will certainly look at that.
Sadness in your life, you understand your foes and your friends who comes, sit down, shed some tears, and sympathize with you. It's very difficult.
We understand.
I salute you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. We will certainly take up the issue at the appropriate time. So thank you for sharing the story. All right, we are still in citizens forum. I know we have a number of people. Vern, why don't you go? I'm going to recognize Vern first. You raised your hand first. So go ahead and then I'll let everybody have a chance to speak that wants to speak, so.
Vern Millsap, Urbandale. You guys may think I like speaking up here, but I don't. But I want to, just looking over some stuff, I just wondered where Urbandale is going. I see in there where there's basic income for $500 a month, low rent housing, and it looks like the Green New Deal. We're talking carbon footprints and counselors with police officers. I think it's probably safer, maybe in my opinion, to have 2 officers and no counselor, but I'm not trying to downgrade anybody, but just makes more sense. The other thing was that with the Green New Deal, if that's what's going on, you have lithium batteries. Where are people going to get lithium? There's only a couple countries that got it. And their prices are just skyrocketing. And I also seen charging stations, stuff like that. That's fine if you want an electric car, but many of us don't want an electric car and don't want to pay for one. So also, is if we lost power for any reason at all, for a length of time, nobody's going to go anywhere with a lithium battery. Plus, the way they mine it is usually with slave labor in China. So just food for thought. Thank you.
All right, thank you, man. Yes, ma'am, you're next. I'll recognize you. Yep, come on up. Yep.
All right, good evening. My name is Betty Salmon, and I live at 9106 Greenbelt Drive here in Urbandale. And I'm here to thank the City Council for 2 things, and one of them is for joining other metro area municipalities in our recent Polk Grove Solar program. I just come to report that I think it's been hugely successful. I've talked to the installer several times. There's been a lot of interest in it, and they've really exceeded the maximum that they expected to. So thank you very much. It's still open until the end of the month. They've extended it because it's done so well. And the second thing I wanted to thank you for is for something that I know is on the agenda tonight, and that's the greenhouse gas emissions inventory. I want to thank you for doing that. I think that's a really important first step in just looking at what we can do to improve things. I know that a lot of us are looking forward to a climate action plan out of it, something that would give us a coordinated vision for what we're going to do. So again, just thank you for what you've done and for allowing me to speak.
All right, thank you, Betty, appreciate it. All right, is there anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir. I thought you would.
Yes, thank you for your time. My name is Denny Bain. I've lived in Urbandale since 1971, but I started going to Urbandale in 1949. My brother and I would travel the gravel roads from Des Moines to get to a town called Urbandale to use their roller rink and a movie theater that was here. I'm currently on the board at the Urbandale Senior Rec Center, which I've seen several of you serving dinners to us, lunches, et cetera. I'm currently as the president on that board. I've served as secretary, treasurer, vice president, president, past chairman, and so forth and so on. But I'm here today to talk about pickleball. I talked to one of your previous council members, Dave Russell, here this afternoon at an event, and he said I should present my ideas to you. I play pickleball just about every day, along with a large group of my friends, and we play in different municipalities, Clive, West Des Moines, Waukee, Urbandale, at Walker Johnson, et cetera. But in 2 months, we won't be able to play. It's going to be winter. And I'm proposing that there has got to be some empty building, empty structure that we could play pickleball. Now, you wouldn't have to buy it, rent it if possible. You'd have to talk to a realtor. I am not a realtor, okay? But renting the facility just for 5 months, like November through March. And it wouldn't have to be open all day, wouldn't have to be open at night, just 8 o'clock in the morning to say noon, and charge a fee, like $5. A lot of places charge, in Johnston, at their St. Paul's Presbyterian Church, they charge $4 a person to play. Smash Park out in West Des Moines, they charge a lot more than $5 or $4. But I really think that we definitely have a need for pickleball here indoors in Urbandale, and we wouldn't have to build a facility, just rent a place. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for comments. Thank you, Danny. Appreciate it. All right, is there anyone else who'd like to address the council on something not a part of tonight's agenda? All right, we will move on then. And then item 5 is for the adoption of the minutes. First is item 5.1 for the September 6th meeting.
Move approval of September 6th council minutes.
Motion by Carberry Montgomery. Second by Blake. Discussion, please vote. It passes. And then the September 13 lunch and learn.
I'll move approval of the September 13th lunch and learn minutes.
Motion by Carberry Montgomery. Second by Blake. Discussion, please vote. All right, that passes. Item 6 is the consent agenda. There are 16 items on that for approval.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by McBurney, second by Blake. Discussion, please vote. That passes. Item 7 is to establish a public hearing for the Parks Maintenance Facility repurposing, and this sets the public hearing date of October 18, 2022. AJ, did you have anything further to add on that? Or?
Nothing more than that's been supplied in the council letter, but I'd be happy to answer questions you may have.
Motion to open the public hearing?
No, is this a motion to set the public hearing?
Establish the public hearing, thank you. Motion to establish the public hearing.
Okay, motion by McBurney. Second by Blake. Discussion, please vote. All right, that passes. Item 8, planning and zoning items. We have one, which is 8.1, is the Biltmore West Plat 2 final plat on 179th Street and Sharon Drive, and introduces is our Community Development Director, Steve Franklin. Steve.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, all. So this is another final plat out west. Here's the aerial photograph of where we are. This is 170th Street. This is Meredith. This is the still fairly new Radiant Elementary School. So we're at 179th Street. Phase 1, which was approved last year, is what you see just north of Meredith here with the 2 entrances off of Meredith. And then phase 2 is this area here in red. It does propose a number of lots, and there will be more plats coming. As far as the plat itself, there we go. So this is the cover sheet, which is probably the best sheet to show you. So again, plat 1 was the area down here adjacent to Meredith. Plat 2 are the areas that you see in the darker outline. It is 44 acres of the entire development. There are 63 additional single-family residential lots. Most of these have a minimum lot width of 65 feet. There are a few 70s in there. This PUD was written so that the south portion of the area would be 70-foot lots and the north would be the 65-foot lots. And then there is a large outlot, which you see here to the north. This will be additional plats for streets as they run to the north. You can see future street connections there, and there. There's 4 of them altogether. So, but this is plat 2 for 63 additional lots. Planning and Zoning Commission does recommend approval subject to items noted. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Steve, is outlot Y like a permanent outlot?
Down here, yes, that is detention, surface water flowage easement.
So I haven't been on my daily trips along Meredith for a while. So is there construction happening of homes?
Yep.
And it said in the council letter or whatever I read, the widening of Meredith would happen in 2023. So is that, am I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, are we closing Meredith again? 'Cause I thought that's what it said in,
Construction of widening Meredith is 2023. Yeah. And we'll have to see if that's
oh,
still,
wait, no, that's the maintenance facility. Let me see, hold on. Yes. So how does that, is John on the phone? How does that fit in?
Yes, I am on the phone.
Thank you. How does that fit in
the
with?
2023, you say 2023 is not correct. We won't be doing anything on there. I believe it's maybe 26-ish, and a lot of that's going to depend on the city of Clive. They would like it pushed back even further. So
right.
in the next couple years, there won't be anything being done on Meredith Drive.
That was really what I
Sorry,
wanted,
we did not catch that.
what I really wanted to confirm, because I'd love to have a few years of
That would be nice.
open passage once we get, we get it open
Correct.
again.
Yep, that will be a few years.
And will the Meredith and Alice's be open in November? Is that the plan?
That is currently the plan. Again, there's been a lot of challenges with the project, so we're still hoping for Thanksgiving.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further questions on this? Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of Council Letter 7209.
Motion by Carberry Montgomery, second by Blake. Discussion, please vote. Okay, that passes. Item 9, regular agenda items. First is item 9.1, and that's to consider the 28E agreement for the Law Enforcement Crisis Intervention Program. And to introduce this is our Police Chief, Rob Johansson. Chief?
Mayor and members of council, I'm here tonight to present a 28E agreement with Heart of Iowa Region and the city of Urbandale to start our crisis intervention program, or crisis intervention team. If I can get my PowerPoint open. There we go. I just got a few slides here just to keep me on point. So this will pair a sworn officer, which will be called a crisis intervention officer, with a trained mental health professional. This partnership with the Heart of Iowa region. Heart of Iowa is contracting for the mental health professional through Zion Behavioral Health. Begin training that team January 1st is what we're kind of anticipating, and hopefully be responding to calls by February. The team will respond to calls for service regarding mental health issues or where mental health or substance abuse is a significant factor. And there's just a little snapshot of calls for service that we've had over the last several years regarding mental health or substance abuse. Crisis Intervention Officer is fully funded by the Heart of Iowa region, funding currently in place for the next 3 years, and the 28E also allows for a 2-year extension after that 3 years. If everything's going well, we have an option to get out of it if we give notice in the 28E as well, if things are not going well or there's a change in funding that we don't want to support anymore. I don't anticipate that happening, but we do have that option. Mental health professional will be employed by the contracted mental health service organization, which is currently Zion. And this includes funding for a fully equipped unmarked police vehicle, and includes maintenance as well as office equipment and cell phone for the team, for their officer. Funding includes ILEA training, if needed, uniforms and equipment. So when we staff this, we're going to staff it with an experienced officer, obviously, but then we will have to replace that officer with a new person. So that new person will likely need to go to the academy and be outfitted, obviously. So we asked about those costs, and he said, yeah, absolutely, we can submit those costs as that's the replacement for that officer that we've assigned. So bottom line is, they're going to cover everything for us with their funding that they've secured already. So there's not really a risk for the city of Urbandale to go down this venture. Currently, there's a team operational in Waukee. They started in July. I met with them on Monday of this week and talked about their calls for service and how it's going, and everything's going fantastic there, and it's really been helpful. All of the Westcom agencies and the Dallas County Sheriff's Office are going to participate in this program, or at least tentatively have agreed to participate. Waukee first, then us, and it looks like maybe West Des Moines, and we're just gonna they're staggering out as they go and join those other communities. The communities in Westcom are Norwalk, Waukee, Urbandale, Clive, Windsor Heights, and West Des Moines. And then on top of that, Dallas County Sheriff's Office has indicated that they are also going to participate, so. Once we have all those teams spun up, there is a talk about collaborating as more of a kind of a task force concept, so those teams can help each other. Let's just say, for example, the Urbandale team is off, they have vacation or something, and there's a call that comes in, then maybe the Waukee team would come over and handle that call until they got back from their vacation, and then they would pick up with that case and go on from there. But that's kind of the concept, grand scheme of things down the road a little bit. So we're hoping that comes to fruition. The agreement also includes 40 hours of crisis intervention response training for all of our sworn officers, and that has already begun. And we have 17 that have already attended that training. They're doing a section almost every month, and we send a few officers every month, so you don't have to basically deplete your forces to get the training in. So they've staggered it out over several months, and we've been attending that already. So, and that's been going really well, been well received by the officers. That's kind of it in a nutshell. I can answer any questions, hopefully.
I have a couple. First, I want to say, I still remember coming into our budget hearing and being like, this is my top priority. And then you're like, well, we found a funding source and we got this going. So I want to say, I'm just saying kudos. This is fantastic. I'm absolutely just tickled that we're moving forward with this. I do have a question related. It looked like substance abuse and mental health were kind of the priorities with this. A question that's arisen from the past is domestic abuse and domestic violence. Would that be something that would be considered in the future, or is that outside the scope of what you think this would be?
I think it's outside of the scope of this unless there's a connection to that is occurring because of mental health issues. Okay. So if someone involved in a domestic abuse situation and it's happening because there are mental health issues, then that team would, and that's one of the things that they mentioned to me on Monday. They were surprised how many calls that weren't coming in as mental health calls had a mental health aspect to it that was the cause that was happening because of that, that mental health issue. So they were going to a lot more calls than they anticipated because of that underlying mental health issue that's causing all these other issues, domestic abuse, those types of things. So absolutely, but as far as responding just to take care of domestic abuse victims and those types of things, I think that's a different area of that we would have to do something different with.
Okay. And then my second question is just procedurally from Waukee's perspective. Let's say there is a mental health or substance abuse. Is this the team that shows up first, or do they follow in behind after our first responders get on the scene?
Right, a little bit of both.
Okay.
So depending on the call, obviously, and how, I guess for lack of a better term, volatile the situation is initially. I don't anticipate us sending this team to a very volatile situation. Maybe we send this team and we send another officer, so we have this 2-officer team there until we get things controlled, things are settled down. Then that single officer is put back into service right away and the team takes over. But yes, they are responding to the initial calls. They're also doing the follow-up calls afterwards. So obviously they can't work 24/7. So if something comes in overnight, they're getting the referrals from the night shift officers, and then they're making contact the next morning, depending on the situation, if the person's in the hospital or something like that. But they're making those contacts, follow-up appointments, making sure they're getting to the doctor's appointments, medications taken care of, all those services that person needs to get back on that road to recovery. That's what this team is helping. And then what they're finding is the people that are, again, I hate to use this term, frequent flyers, the people that are calling a lot, Now those calls are being diverted from 911 or the crisis situation to they're actually calling the team members and they're responding to those calls directly rather than that call even going into the dispatch center in the first place.
Okay.
So,
And I guess my final thing is just, I love the idea of the collaboration, and if, I think a Westcom focused one that has all folks, I think that's a brilliant idea, and I hope that works out, so I'm done talking.
All right.
I was gonna follow up on that piece. So it sounds like right now our officer is only going to respond to Urbandale, and then the Waukee officer is only gonna respond to Waukee.
yes, to
Okay.
start off with, there's no talk yet until we get a few more teams spun up. Not even with the Waukee team at this point are we going to be responding into Waukee. I think we're just going to get our foot on the ground first and get going. But as that gets established, because there's only one team right now, so once that second team gets going, if we see opportunities there where we can go over into Waukee and help with that, we definitely will do that.
And then I was looking at the numbers. It looked like we had 218 calls in 2022 so far. Are we anticipating that those numbers are going to go up because they're going to be categorized more correctly?
Yes, and that's where you see that little bit of increase on that, if I can pull that chart up, that 51 calls at the top there where it says mental health and there isn't any on the other years. That is Westcom's attempt to better capture those calls for service coming in and categorize them correctly. So yeah, those numbers that you're seeing there are low because they're just coming in as different things, and we haven't done a good job at the dispatch level of categorizing that call as a mental health need. So again, a domestic abuse call, and it stays a domestic abuse call in the CAD system or in our records, when really it was a mental health issue. It's just, we're getting better at recognizing that and getting them recategorized.
Great. I just love the fact that we're really not paying for it.
Yeah, can you explain to me what the Heart of Iowa region, who that is, and what else can we get from them?
So that's a group out of Dallas County that is a service region for mental health.
So is it state money that is?
It is.
Okay.
It's state and federal money.
Okay.
Yes.
And why are they just starting with Westcom? Are they doing stuff with other?
Nope, this is where they're started, and I believe it started with Waukee that opened the door because they're in Dallas County, and they started the conversation with this group, and they tracked down the funding, and they saw a bigger vision of it, and invited us all to join, and we were thankful that they did, so.
Well, I'm very thankful. I think this is a fantastic program. I wish Amy was here tonight to talk about this from her social work perspective. I would love, like, when they have a report, maybe in the early part of the year from Waukee, if we could get a copy of their, I don't know, 6-month report. Because I think this is pretty groundbreaking for us here in Iowa. So I'm sure they'll be eager to push out some data. So if they do, if you could make sure that gets its way to us, or maybe have someone from Heart of Iowa come and talk to us. And then I guess going on a little bit further than what the question Matt asked, I mean, could you walk us through like a hypothetical call and like how it would be handled without this team, and then how it would be handled with this team?
Sure.
I mean, I don't know.
Let's just use attempted suicide as an example. So if we send an officer to that, we would try.
So someone finds a person that has attempted suicide, they call 911.
Or they're called, a loved one calls and says, this person is going through a crisis and they're talking about suicide. We respond to that call. An officer has very limited options. We can transport you to the hospital. We can do those types of things. This team will do sort of the same thing, but it's going to be the follow-up services afterwards is where I really see the advantage, because I can't remember who I told this to, but police officers handled mental health crises for, the 30 years that I've been in, and we've done a really good job. We bring people to the hospital and then that's it, right? We handle the crisis, and then the next day they're back home again. And it seems like the services are falling off, and there's no follow-up with them to make sure that they're staying on task on their medications or getting to their appointments, those types of things. That's where I see this group really pushing it to the next level, because we don't have that connection where we're getting those people back to those services the day or two or a week later. That's where it falls off, and then the next thing you know, it's another crisis call 2 weeks later, because they haven't been going to their appointments, they haven't been taking their medication, they haven't been doing the things that they're supposed to do. It almost becomes a little bit of a caseworker situation, but not really, but that's kind of the way I think of it in my head. And that's where I see that this is happening, you know, and then again, they build up that trust where when we go to a call sometimes with an officer, those people sometimes they don't trust us, and they think that they're going to jail or something like that. Whereas this team will build that trust with the law enforcement agency and be able to say, because they work with them now and they know them, they get to be on that first name basis with them, and they know that, hey, what they tell me is the truth, and they're just trying to help me. So we're hoping that not only helps the team members, but also when an officer shows up at night, then they start to trust the police department that we're there to help them and not cause them more grief.
Is there a tie-in then, Chief, to someone who calls 211 on that line? Is that operational in Iowa? First of all, 211, I think.
No, that's the.
United Way.
That's
Is
the
that-
United Way, the 811.
No, 81. Okay, what's
988 suicide prevention.
980? Okay, I was trying to remember 980. Sorry, I was.
Not that I'm aware of. There's no tie-in to that. These would be calls that are direct.
These are just going in the Westcom calls.
Yep, 911 calls or the non-emergency number coming into Westcom, and then they're diverted to us.
I knew there was a new number for
Yep.
suicide.
Yeah, 988 is, that I know of, at least I've seen people promoting it. But
Right, and I know that if they have a situation at that where they need to have a response in person, like if someone calls 988 and it's a suicide prevention thing, they will call Westcom and we will respond. If it's a crisis situation that they can't resolve and feel like there's a danger to somebody, then we do respond to those calls. They do come into the center.
Okay.
I do have one final follow-up because I know this is something Amy's asked several times. Where will these folks be housed?
Well, I'm giving up my little tiny conference room right off my office. That's the only place we have left in the building. We're going to put office space in there, and they're going to be working with our support services division is going to be the command structure for them, for that officer. So that's where the support services wing is anyway, if you will. That's where all they're housed, our community relations office and all that. So it's going to work well. It's where it's at, but I'll have to walk down to the big conference room in the front for a while. So yeah, we're going to put them in there. Like I said, I hope when all these teams are spun up that we feel that we can put all these teams in one location somewhere. And I don't know where that is, or that's just the grandiose thing in my mind, that we get them all, like I said, what I compare it to is a drug task force. Yeah. You know, they have a location where all the narcotics officers go and work, and they're from all these different departments, but they all work in one location together and handle all these things in all these different cities and back each other up and are on call for other cities, you know, so not everybody's on call all the time. They just help each other out. I see this working exactly the same way once we get enough teams spun up to cover each other.
Couple questions too. Getting it from everybody. So great job in talking through kind of that crisis piece of it. And so when you move out of that crisis mode, how long, I don't know if Waukee talked about it, how long is Waukee staying involved? I mean, is this, it's been there for 6 months, so they're staying there 6 months, or what is?
Right, and I don't think there's any set time frame for when someone, depending on whether they can get them through the crisis and back on their feet again, and if they're to a point where the mental health professionals feel that they are, you know, not needing any more services, or they're going to those services on their own, they're not needing any prompting or any intervention, if you will, to get them there, or those types of things. So I think it's really depends on case by case. Yeah, so I don't know how quickly this could overwhelm the group. You know, we were just in our meeting on Monday with them, I was talking a little bit about West Des Moines and just the number of calls they have. They're not sure that one team is going, they're pretty sure one team's not going to be enough for West of the size of the city. And that may not be the case for us either. And I think the funding will be there if we want to expand this and we can show that we're doing good work and there's just more calls than we can handle. I think the funding's out there if you can prove that. So it'll be documentation of those calls for service as well. But yeah, I can't tell you exactly, you know, each case will be a little bit different. Maybe that crisis intervention, that they're at the house and they get them to the hospital, and that's all they need to do with that family at that time. There might be somebody else that's chronic, a chronic case that has to go back to the repeat calls too. So I think it'll be very case by case when it comes to that.
And then my follow-up was going to be, so if 212 is what we've had so far, that seems to be overwhelming a team that's working an 8-hour shift. And so that's not a lot of time to handle that many cases.
Right.
So hopefully the group does have the funding to be able to go back to, and whether it's either a third person up into a fourth person, I'm guessing it's going to be needed fast.
I think that's what we're going to find out is that one team in each city may be sufficient for some, but I don't know that it's going to be sufficient for Urbandale. We'll see.
Then AJ might have to go.
I talked to them, about their volume in Waukee, and they said very busy over the summer, and it started to slow down a little bit. Now the school started back up, and people are back into a routine and stuff. It seems to be a little bit of that, and that's all different types of crimes and things that we deal with. Weather affects it, scheduling for people, and that types of things will play factors in how many calls for service you're getting. But they are staying plenty busy in Waukee, and we're twice that size. So, yeah, I expect them to, be very, very busy.
Are they working with the SROs at all to deal with any school-related issues, or?
Only if it comes into them. So no, initially they were going to pair up with the schools in Waukee, and now they're actually in the Waukee Police Department, not in the school. So their initial thought was they were going to be in the school, and I thought that was a little odd because it wasn't just centered on students. So, but they didn't end up going that way. They are actually in the Waukee Police Department. They're pressed for space over there as well, so that was one of the considerations, I think. But they can definitely respond to student issues. I don't know that we'll be getting a lot of calls to the school, but when they go
Well, I
home.
know they're expanding their mental health capacity as well, so.
Most of the schools use employee family resources for their mental health services. So nice to see this as additional add-on in the community.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I'm sure we could call in Amy and she'd have more, but it's kind of late in Spain.
So this is step one. We'll get the 2080 agreement signed, and then we'll start working towards, policy. Obviously we have an example policy from Waukee and some other communities, but we'll get all the policies spun up, and then we'll obviously have to train the mental health professional to be with us a little bit. That's that month in January. So I think February, getting them out there actually responding to calls by February is a good timeline for us.
Okay, I have one more question. So we closed in the consent agenda, we closed and deactivated the police officer list in the consent agenda, didn't we?
Oh, yeah.
So does that mean that you're going to be gearing up?
It's already posted.
Okay.
Besides this position, we still need 3 others.
Okay.
So we'll need 4 now instead of 3. We didn't hire enough there just wasn't enough candidates out there to get us full last time. So we're in this continual cycle of reposting our position, working through that civil service list and going through backgrounds and stuff, and then hiring the ones that we got 2 off this last list hired. And then the others we did not give job offers to, and we're starting the process over again. So down 3, and then be 4 with this position.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. With that, is there a motion?
I'll move approval of council letter 70-10.
Motion by Carberry Montgomery, second by McBurney. Discussion, please vote. Okay, that passes. Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate that. All right, item 9.2 is to consider the engineering services agreement for Douglas Avenue urbanization from 86th Street to 75th Street. And to introduce this is our Director of Engineering and Public Works, John Larson. John?
I guess on this one, I'd just be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions for John on this?
Does this include the landscape plan, kind of like we've had on the 86th to 100th Street, or is that going to be separate as well?
That will be separate.
Okay. Any further questions? Is there a motion?
Yeah, motion to approve Council Letter 7205.
Second.
Motion by McBurney, second by Blake. Discussion, please vote. Okay, that item passes. Item 9.3 is to discuss the greenhouse gas emissions next steps, and I'm going to introduce John Collier to get us started. John?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Sorry, I had to come from the back. Took me a minute to get here. Kind of want to give you a brief overview. Inside the council letter, there was a brief synopsis of kind of staff's ask for the council moving this forward. We did the greenhouse gas emissions report, started that in February, worked through, completed that in July. On August 16th, you had lunch and learn. Cassandra Soni from University of Northern Iowa CEEE presented the findings from the greenhouse gas emissions report. That report, remember, took 2020 data, kind of came up and said that we generated 504,000 metric tons equivalent of CO2 in 2020 and kind of hit transportation, commercial, and residential usage as those main drivers. Then inside of that report, they also laid out, here are 4 other places that are like us that have done climate action plans and kind of what they focused on as far as things to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and then also greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals. So inside of your council, it kind of laid out where exactly would you like staff to focus our time and direction on? And with that, I will take a seat, answer any questions, and kind of let you have a nice discussion about that.
Thank you, John. Oops, thank you, John. Anybody want to start some discussion on this?
So John.
Yes, Councilmember Blake.
Yes. So you have these different options here. So there's the climate action plan, the establishment of reduction goals. So when you're asking for our direction of where staff's energy is into, like, what are you really wanting us to focus on with this?
I guess the roadmap that staff is looking for is if you are to do a climate action plan, that is kind of the full-blown, that would take into account the other 2 options that were laid out. So that plan would come in and kind of address what is your 2020 data, where do you want to go, and then what goals do you want to set to get there, and then more importantly, how much do you want to fund it and at what level to get you there? Because that will drive your goal. So if you say we want to put $1,000 in for next year and do that for 50 years, your goal is going to need to be really far stretching because it will take you an awful long time to neutralize, let alone reduce. So if you set a goal for you want to be carbon net neutral by 2050, which is what the Accords have set out for the US, then you are going to, that will lay out your plan to get there based on today's consumption and the next future years' projected growth. And so it will say you would need to tackle transportation, commercial, residential usage to get yourself down to net zero by 2050. And that would kind of lay out your plan and your map. If you don't want to do that, because I'll be honest, to do a climate action plan is probably going to cost you $150,000 to $300,000. They are not cheap, but they are in-depth and very detailed pathway to get you to where you would like to get to. So if that's not the direction for staff, then the other 2 options come in of, do you want to set a goal, carbon net neutral by 2050 or 50% reduction by 2050? Then that will give staff an idea of where we should focus attention and things to look at to both work in-house and then also to partner and find out how are things that we can do to drive that greenhouse gas emissions reductions down. Yes, Mayor?
Well, I'm waiting for you to go ahead. I was someone to bring in something. Well, go ahead.
No, the third option is we don't want to set a goal because that's very public forward-facing, saying we want to achieve this by this date, is if we want to work and do and set out and lay out goals, I would say the top tier reduction pieces addressed inside of the report are transportation and then commercial and residential usage. We can look at the 4 benchmarks that they gave us and say, what are pieces that we can partner and work with to start to move that needle so we can reach a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions? So I guess that's Councilmember Blake in a really long-winded answer, kind of what staff is looking for. Do we do the action plan and go all in? Do you want to set a goal as a council we want to reduce by this amount? Or do we want to start to look at, here are things that we can do to start to reduce? And then we can come back and maybe set a goal or maybe do a plan at some point in time.
What I wanted to bring in before we start talking about all that, thank you, John, for all that, but what I wanted to insert is that this is very timely from a Metro perspective as well, because at the MPO, and I don't know, have you had any coordination, John, with the MPO on this? Because there's been a Metro-wide greenhouse gas emissions inventory done. And I was gonna actually bring that up and look at that. I don't know how it compares to what we did on our own. They did all, I think you coordinated, didn't you, with the MPO on their work on that too, or not?
I've seen theirs, yes, and it's very similar. It wasn't done by the same it wasn't done by CEEE, but yes, it's a lot of the same work that they've done to kind of set that baseline. Des Moines done 2 of them in the last 7 years, so they had a great input into that as well also.
Okay. Did you compare the data that came from the MPO to what we got on our own? Is it close? Is it similar? Is it really divergent? Or where?
No, the major greenhouse gas emissions creations are almost identical. Yeah. Transportation, commercial, residential. Theirs is also breakdown commercial and industrial. And so theirs is slightly different in that, but if you lump those together, they're all the same, almost.
Where I was going with it too is I think the MPO is a regional organization who's going to be talking about how we can address some of this as well. So before we completely forge out on our own, I'm thinking maybe we want to have some coordination from that as well. I mean, I think we can talk about broad steps, but also it might be worthwhile to also discuss this comprehensively as a region as well. That's why I wanted to bring that up, so.
I do have a couple other questions. So, and I thank you, Mayor. If we did the greenhouse, and I think I would just, out of curiosity, and I just don't know this well enough from Des Moines, because they've done a climate action plan. And it sounds like to be this comprehensive and to take years, it would take a tremendous amount of staff time to do. Does Des Moines have a sustainability position or some position within their infrastructure to keep the city on task for meeting those goals? Or is that, I'm just curious, like, we create the climate plan, we implement it, we want to move forward with it, we have till 2050 to get our stuff done. Who keeps us honest on that? I was just curious how Des Moines does it.
Des Moines had a position. I don't know if they currently have the same person today, but yes, they have a person, it's a supervisor level position that oversees and works with their climate action plan. So they cut across fleet, building services, policy, and really coordinates and kind of keeps that process moving across the way. The MPO, I believe, is talking about something of that similar nature of having a group of people who would help coordinate that moving forward. That would be if we did an action plan, we would need to assess that of, is there in-house staff currently now that would make that plan and then actually have it move out forward, or is it something that you would need to budget for in future years? Okay. The recommendation was that if you wanted to do an action plan, that would be something that would need to be put into the FY 23-24 budget just because of its cost, and then you would need to future plan that out as well.
I've had some conversation with members of the Johnston City Council. Well, it was around budget time, but about the possibility of a joint position for sustainability shared between Johnston and Urbandale. I don't know where they're at in this process. I know in Ames, they have a joint position between Iowa State and the city of Ames. I mean, I feel very strongly of the need to address this regionally, but I also want to get started here in Urbandale. And I know that the MPO is is not the quickest to act on things, despite their excellent chair. So I think that, I mean, we have to work with Des Moines, we have to work with all of our communities because, you know, one of the biggest pieces is transportation. And unless we're working metro-wide, you know, and with DART, you know, it's not going to be terribly helpful if Norwalk decides to, you know, do their own thing, or we decide to do our own thing and nobody else is on board. So I feel like we need to keep going with the MPO, obviously, but I would like to see us, along with Des Moines, kind of start taking local action sooner rather than later, because this climate crisis is not getting any better.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, I'm a proponent of the climate action plan and focusing on where it is that we can integrate some of the ideas that we want to see done with the help of some of our surrounding cities. So if we know that Des Moines already laid out a roadmap on how to do something, we don't necessarily need to recreate the wheel, right? Like we know that. Or if, for instance, I know I talked to, I'm assuming the same person on Johnston City Council, and they're extremely excited about having some sort of position for themselves in Johnston. Well, if we can use that and kind of split the resources, any way that we can go about this more strategically, I think is probably the more appropriate way of approaching it. But I do think that it needs to be something that the public can hold us accountable for. So, and I think having that front-facing climate action plan is the way to do that.
Well, yeah. Some of the things to me seem to be contradictory a little bit, and so it's just making sure we come up with a plan that actually is embracing what's out there. So if we're going to, and I'll pick on two, reduce vehicle miles driven but have an electric vehicle fleet, to me those are contradictory of each other. If we have electric mile fleet that's 100% renewable fuels, we don't really care how many miles they're driving. So just when we get into this, that we use our brain on it, and also we're looking at what's our population growth look like. So if we're going to ask for reduction in emissions, which goes into construction, which may not allow us, you know, so just that we take into account that could be a community of 75, 80,000 people by the time 2050 rolls around, and that we're targeting goals that meet those numbers, not just a community of 45,000. So I just don't want unintended consequences to prevent us from being what we can be for a community. And I guess do we need to go down this route? That's going to be debated at a future time, but it's more of whatever targets we lay out, that they don't have unintended consequences that prevent us from being great, so.
Again, I think it's great to do this metro-wide. I mean, first of all, I think we save resources by doing that, and we're more efficient in creating some metro-wide goals. Secondly, I think it creates buy-in by all the cities in the metro, and it's similar to, you know, the stormwater ordinances that we put in effect. You know, we all recognize that we need to address stormwater, but you know, once cities start peeling off from that, or once you don't have the buy-in from a region, then you start creating some environments where, you know, it's their perception that some cities are less development friendly or more development friendly, depending on whether they do that. So if you can create that pressure to have the buy-in from a metro standpoint, then I think that's better for everyone, that we are consistent and we have standards consistently across the region, and we all recognize that this is an important issue. So that's why I like to see us working together as Metro versus, I understand that we want to do this, and I feel strongly about it too, but I want to make sure that we're working in tandem with our neighbors as well, that we all have similar goals to get this accomplished, so. Okay,
So do you have direction from us on what to do with this conversation? Well, I think Bridget too. Because I agree. I think ultimately I do agree with the concept that if you want to actually make this effective, you do need to have a regional basis. You need to have Altoona through Waukee and every city in between having this, playing from the same sheet of music. Like, you do need to have that in order to actually find objectable changes when it comes to this. But I think from the direction for staff, my suggestion is that we at least move forward with the budgeting of the climate action plan on the same path. Like, we can still move, I think we can still move forward with the development of our plan, and if we can coincide that and use the information that we gather to help illustrate to a larger metro, I think that could help in both ways. I think they're not mutually exclusive. I think they can do them together. And so I would say from my direction, I would like the climate action plan because it is most comprehensive, and I would like to move forward with the budgeting of it. But I think the mayor does make a very, very good point that we do need to use this, be unified on it. So that would be my suggestion from my perspective. I don't know if my other council members agree.
No, I fully agree with that, and I think that sometimes what I feel like happens with our surrounding cities is we all kind of high level agree, but nobody really takes the first step. Des Moines always marches to be their own drum, we know that. So for us to be able to make this commitment now and kind of hopefully nudge some of these other cities that, hey, we're already starting to take that step, where are you? And start being at the forefront and hopefully get them to commit to the same overall goals as a region that we want to see.
With all due respect, I'm going to be pushing this from the MPO standpoint too. So as the chair of Bridget, I'm going to be pushing this, making the MPO move faster. But again, this is one thing that has been discussed, and we just had the presentation at our last month's meeting, and I'm going to sit down with MPO staff this month. They've asked me what issues I want to see pursued particularly, and this is one of them. So I'm going to sit down with Dylan and Todd and go over this and see what we can accomplish from a regional standpoint. And John, certainly I want to get you inserted in that conversation at some point too. So.
Well, as I'm sitting between the two of you, I mean, I appreciate the need that we do this as a metro, but I don't want to wait. I mean, we can't wait, is where I'm coming from. And so I want to see in our budget preparations a plan that includes a climate action plan and possible consideration of hiring staff, start those discussions with Johnston. I don't know if that's too late. I don't understand how you guys budget all behind the scenes. It's just magic. It just drops on our lap in December or November.
We want to keep that mystery going. No.
But we have to have the metro buy-in, but we also can't, we're spinning our heels at MPO trying to do things because, not everybody in the metro can agree. And I feel that this is an issue that we have to get started on because it can't wait.
I guess I know, I get that, and I don't disagree with that by any means. I guess what I'm saying, we can go down parallel paths, I guess is my point. And so there are discussions we can have internally on our own as far as moving forward and working together in tandem, possibly with Johnston, but we can also all I'm saying is let's be cognizant of what we're talking about regionally as well, and making sure that we're not missing opportunities from that standpoint too. And we just need to coordinate and everybody talk to each other. That's the biggest thing is communication, so.
And I think from a staff's perspective that, we can take that, we can put a climate action plan in for the next fiscal 23-24 budget process. And that may be one that we do on our own, or it may be one that we do in conjunction with the MPO or with Johnston. And, and that gives us that option to look and see what's out there and then make sure that we have funds and/or staff that can actually take that on and make that happen as we move forward.
Just always like to remind, we have a degree of flexibility as we go through a process to adapt. And we can change if we take more of a leadership role or if we take a supportive role. It really is six of one and half a dozen the other. We can make those adaptations as we go. Much like you heard the presentation from the police chief as far as our initial steps on dealing with mental health related issues when it came to law enforcement. There's a lot of things we don't know yet how we can be cooperative with each other and as people get geared up. And so this is somewhat similar, that you have a program that has significant impact throughout the metro. And as you mentioned, Des Moines has different resources and different desires. From the other perspectives, we can see what's going on, but we can also adapt and change as they go forward. So if we could, as John mentioned, establish a plan and some budgetary guidelines for your consideration during the budget review, that also gives us a chance to check in with other communities. I hate to use Westcom as a central focus, but those are the communities that we work more closely with just because of geographic proximity. And we have great working relationships with them. So again, I just wanted to emphasize, don't lose the fact of there's a lot of adaptability here.
I'm trying to figure out the name, like West Gas or, I don't know.
I think we'll work on that.
I thought we were gonna make it through the entire conversation without some kind of that show.
All right, thank you,
Well,
John.
you know, he brought it up, so we need to, you know, it needs to have a catchy name.
Yeah, so we have good direction. Thanks for your work so far on this, John.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, that takes us to the end then of our regular agenda items. Item 10, Mayor and Council items. Adam.
So tonight, got to do ribbon cutting at Marco, one of the many companies in Urbandale, and the ribbon cuttings that we've all been able to attend over the past months, but just continuing to show the great businesses that do happen in town. I mean, this is a company that I think a year ago was 10 employees in Urbandale, is now 30. So just continuing to grow, and they brought in a lot of staff. So that's the good. The other is just something that from the last meeting, it bothered me. And that was the silence that happened. And when there's silence, people are going to fill in the void with their own thoughts. And so when we had silence at the last meeting, when a developer came in, I've heard from a couple of the developers of, do we not want retail in Urbandale? Do we only want warehouses in Urbandale? The silence is going to get filled with their own idea. And so if we have agenda items that, whether we pass them or not pass them, that's not the conversation. It's, we have heard a lot on the campaign trails over the last 2 years and a year ago about transparency and making sure that everybody knows what's going on. And obviously after that conversation and after the meeting, there wasn't a voice that was out there. And so silence happened. The community is going to be there with their silence and fill in the void accordingly. So as we move through things, just share thoughts. Discussion tonight was great. May not always agree with what's being talked about, but discussion needs to happen, and we missed that opportunity at the last meeting to share thoughts, so.
Yeah, well, I thought there would be at least a second to the motion, so we'd have some debate on that. So, again, I was a little concerned about that as well. We didn't have the discussion on that, and frankly, the applicant can come back again. I don't, since the rezoning application was not voted on, I think that can come back within a year versus if it being voted down. So I appreciate the comments though, Adam. So, Bridget?
Surprisingly, I have nothing to say.
Okay. Matt?
The only thing, speaking of business, I was able to, this is very random, but in the last week, I ate at our two newest restaurants, the new Burmese restaurant and the Fat Charlie's, which replaced the location over in Mama Lacona. And I just want to say they're both fantastic, and I'm glad that we have additional restaurants that are opening in the Urbandale area. So just shout out to everybody to continue to go to Urbandale restaurants and support our local business.
Fat Charlie's has looked busy. Has it been?
Yes, I went on a Friday night, so it was busy at the time. but the Burmese restaurant that I went to, I was the only one at the lunch serving at the time. So hopefully we can get some more people
Yeah.
to participate with our local business, so.
Yep, absolutely. Larry?
The only thing I was gonna talk about was what Betty had already brought up at the beginning, and that's get your applications in for the Grow Solar by the end of this month, because we did extend it, so, yeah, that's,
How many watts or?
they haven't given us an
hours
update on that, not since the last update I provided. So I'll follow up with them, have a better number for you next time.
All right, I just want to make another reminder for Run for the Badge on October 1. If you haven't signed up, please, if you have the ability to do that, please join us for that, or at least contribute for that. That's for a great cause, and, you know, you don't have to run. You can shuffle for the badge too, which we'll all probably be doing, so. But again, support that and support our Urbandale Police Department and in honoring Justin Martin and the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.